go. If, yeah, Dr. Aleman, would you like to start us off with just a brief introduction and also something that made you smile, whichever way you would like to do it.
Hi, everybody. You can call me Maria. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Pharmacology, and I've just started a basic research lab. We're investigating things related, things that drive the development of red blood cells. So this is very health. My work is very health related, although it's very basic, meaning very mechanistic. I came to UNC because I actually did my training here. So I got my PhD from the Department of Pathology. And prior to that, I did my undergrad in California, which is where I'm from. I've also worked in the drug development space as well before I came back to UNC as faculty. My work is related to, as I said, red blood cell formation. I'm also interested in how iron deficiency affects red blood cell formation. As you may know, iron deficiency often drives anemia, which is a lack of red blood cells. So that's kind of where my research interests lie. And something that made me smile today, well, every morning my two doggies make me smile. So that's kind of what gets me out of bed every morning.
Dr. Dominguez, would you like to go next?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm happy to be here. I'm also an assistant professor in the pharmacology department. The work we do is extremely basic. So we look at, proteins that bind nucleic acids. More recently, we've been getting into a little bit more disease-related research, but, we're still very, very basic, molecular biology at heart. I'm from Texas, from El Paso, Texas. Let's see, something that made me smile today, when I came in this morning, it was so cold because I got here very early. But when I walked out for lunch, I was surprised to find it was nice and warm and it's sunny. And so that put a smile on my face.
Well, thank you both again for for joining us. And yeah, so I will go ahead and get into our first question. And of course, for our scholars, if at any moment you have any questions, feel free to say them or to write them in the chat, whatever you feel most comfortable with. All right, so our first question is, why did you choose to go into lab research? Was this your initial field of study? And if not, how did you progress into it?
I can start. I didn't know about lab research really when I was young. I knew I liked science, so I went to a science-focused high school. And when I went to undergrad, I chose to major in zoology because I was very interested in animals, quite frankly. And I didn't really understand anything about graduate school, how one gets a PhD. I didn't even consider it as something that I didn't think people like me could do that. I thought you had to be some kind of like genius person. And so it wasn't until I was looking for jobs after graduating that I came upon the fact that there's lots of research labs at universities, which I didn't have at my particular university. It was a very small school. So once I started, I was able to get a position as a research technician in a lab, very much like the lab that I'm running now. And it was there that I came to learn that, research was something that I could do lifelong, and that I really enjoyed it. And I also came to learn about how PhD training actually works, and came to learn that, you know, if you're able to get into a program at a sort of tier 1 research institution, and we can talk more about what that actually means, that you don't have to pay for graduate school, that they actually pay you. And so that was actually a huge lesson for me, because that meant that I could even try to do it. Because if I had to pay out of pocket, I wasn't willing to pay out of pocket for an advanced degree, basically, is what I'm saying. So once I learned that I could afford to go to graduate school, and I knew that I really liked research, I decided to pursue it. So I definitely took a gap year because I was working as a research technician. Actually, I worked for 5 years before I went back to graduate school and started my PhD. I don't remember if there was another part to that question.
You answered them. And I guess another one would be like, how did you find out about those opportunities?
I guess I actually went to a job fair. That's how I got my first job in a research lab, and it's very unusual. But it actually, I was looking for any kind of job where I could use my bachelor's degree. And so, you know, I was really focused on science. And so it just, you know, there really weren't that many positions. And so it's sort of there was a natural funneling of the opportunities just from searching for jobs. Yeah.
Thank you. And yeah, same questions.
Yeah, I guess my situation was a little bit similar. I can back up a little bit. I wasn't necessarily like an ideal high school student, so I wasn't really even thinking about college back then very much. But I was fortunate that there was college in my hometown, which enabled me to go. Also, I was very fortunate that college had a very high acceptance rate, which you know, made it very feasible for me to be admitted. And I was just really confused, I think, for a long time in college. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. It took me 5 years to graduate, and that was mostly because I could not decide on a major. And ultimately, I ended up majoring in mathematics and actually in microbiology. I had no clue what I wanted to do. At the time, I had an older brother who was sort of, going through the process of, actually, I think at that time when I graduated, he was already in medical school. And so if there was a similar program at the college we went to, like this one, he'd probably be a member of the program. And so I thought, for a long time, maybe I would try to go to med school, but, clearly I hadn't really thought about it too much because I hadn't really been preparing very much or doing the things I should have been doing. And so what ended up happening is I ended up taking a job. It was more of a fellowship at a place called the Mayo Clinic, where that would give me the opportunity to, sort of shadow and work with MDs. But really what it was a research experience, but it was also very, clinical and translational. And so, when I first started there, I was, studying for the MCAT and, all that. And then once I started doing research in the lab, I sort of lost all interest in going to medical school. And so my sort of ambition completely shifted from, medicine to research. So I worked there for a year. And after that, I applied to PhD programs. And very much like Maria, when I started at Mayo Clinic, I didn't really know anything about PhD programs, really at all. But luckily I had, very good mentor at Mayo, and she sort of walked me through. I can't emphasize the importance of excellent mentors. It's so important. Anyway, she walked me through the whole process, and I ended up applying to a bunch of schools. And also very much like Maria, I did my PhD here at UNC. And to be honest, that was mostly because at the time, my brother was a resident at Duke. And so I thought it would be nice to, be close to family, because the rest of my family is back in Texas. And so, things went well in my PhD. I then graduated. I did a postdoc in the Boston area. And then I came back here as an assistant professor. And so, yeah, it's a little bit complicated. It's not like I knew from a young age what exactly I wanted to do. And sometimes I still wonder if I'm doing the right thing. So, which is, I think, okay. I mean, it's kind of crazy to ask very young people to decide what they want to do for the rest of their lives. So.
Yeah, thank you both so much. And yeah, I think these are both really important topics to also talk about and to hear from both of you as well. Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge that we have Florence and Millie also join us. Thank you so much. They're also two of our Pulso scholars. So yeah, thank you. So our next question. So you all did mention taking gap years before pursuing your graduate degree. And this is also a conversation that we've had with the scholars and with the School of Medicine, students in the School of Medicine. Yeah, what's made you decide to take a gap year to work before pursuing your graduate degree? And yeah.
So, yeah, I guess given my particular situation where I didn't even know about graduate school when I was finishing my bachelor's, I didn't really have that in my mind. But I will say that I guess I can comment on some of the benefits of taking time off between you're finishing your bachelor's and pursuing an advanced degree, be it a professional degree or anything else. I think it's nice to take a break from schoolwork. I think it's nice to develop additional skills that you gain when you're in a professional environment. So if you go and take a job during your gap year, that can be hugely beneficial. Also, I think I was more mature by the time I went to graduate school, and I think that really benefited me. I had a lot of skills, so I could kind of hit the ground running because I was working sort of in the same field that I was, eventually going to go into. And I think that sort of the network that I gained during that time was also very beneficial sort of long-term, that I didn't necessarily anticipate as a benefit to taking time between, the two sets of schools.
Yeah, I guess I was, I sort of mentioned how I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and I really wasn't willing to commit to something without sort of exploring it even just a little bit. And, that was a little bit tricky because I think like my parents and my brother, they sort of put a lot of pressure on me to just like, well, the reality is they really wanted me to apply to medical school, but I was like, just not ready to commit to that, And so that was sort of the major reason for taking a gap year. And in doing that, I sort of discovered that I really enjoyed something else. So I definitely don't regret doing that. I also just want to sort of, echo what Maria said. When you enter into a professional setting, like a gap year, for example, you make a lot of contacts. In fact, like every contact you make, it might be relevant down the line. And that's really important because it sort of establishes a network. And, you sort of really never know like when you're going to run into the same people that you knew from before. And even now I somehow, it seems that like every now and again, I see people from grad school, from my days at Mayo, or from even undergrad in a professional setting. And those relationships can be really important as you're trying to progress in your career. So that is, one good thing about gap year. Of course, maybe it's not for everyone. I don't know. I don't know what the general consensus is about gap years these days. I know that a lot of the students that we get applying to grad school, because we review applications, many of the students, in fact, most of the students that are very competitive have taken time off between undergrad and their application. So is that something that a lot of students do these days, taking a gap year? It was sort of unpopular when I did it.
Yeah, I think, Daphne writes that she plans to, and I think in conversations that we've had with the students at the School of Medicine at UNC and the School of Dentistry, they've also mentioned taking gap years to do research, to work, to do post-bacs before going into their programs. So it seems like it's a bit more popular now and seen differently than before. Thank you so much. And any questions so far from our scholars? I'm happy to continue with our list.
What classes do y'all teach?
We don't really teach very much. So our primary, I guess, maybe I'll just tell you a little bit about the job we have. The primary job is to do biomedical research. And so we spend almost all of our time running research laboratories. And so I guess we teach in that we recruit graduate students and postdoctoral fellows to do the research in the lab. And
undergrads.
And undergrads, yeah. And we teach them how to do research. But for example, I taught like 2 classes last semester total, like 2 lectures. So
did one lecture.
Yeah, it's very it's a very low teaching load. Really, the focus is on basic research and discovery, which was when I was in undergrad, you hear like a professor, you just assume that they're teaching a bunch of classes. But in fact, here at UNC, most of the professors, at least in the sciences, are they're running research labs essentially. So it's a smaller subset that does primarily lecturing and teaching. But the classes I did teach were on gene regulation. So yeah.
Yeah, and they're for a graduate level pharmacology class.
Have any of you guys done research?
I want to, but I don't know like where to start or how to go about it. I've talked to some of my professors and the doctor that's over the lab that I work in, but I'm still sort of lost though.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's a good experience. I think it sort of forces you to think a little bit differently in sort of when you're in a research environment. You also get to work with people at many different levels of training. So, of course, fellow undergrad, we have high school students in the lab as well. But, undergrads, your colleagues, as well as graduate students, as well as postdocs, senior, postdocs, and these are older individuals that are established, and then faculty. And, I don't think you have to do it for very long to sort of get a sense of whether or not you like it. It's actually pretty quick. Most people are like, yeah, this is not for me. Or, they get really into it. And so if you're, really interested in a research opportunity, I'd be happy to discuss further with you or put you in contact with people that, are working in areas that you might be interested in.
I see Florence mentions that she's in a lab right now. And if she doesn't mind, I'd love to hear more about what she's doing.
I'm in like the Carolina Effective Science Lab. It's led by Dr. Lindquist. Is a psychology, is like an emotions lab. Currently, I am working on like a culture emotion type research, and I'm just currently using database like R, R code. I'm currently learning how to use that. So yeah, that's where I am. I'm just starting.
This is human studies.
Yeah.
Very cool. Thanks.
Yeah, awesome. And I feel also that hearing the word research or laboratory can be very intimidating. Or at least I feel like it for myself, and like thinking of my undergrad self, like hearing those words can be very intimidating. And I guess going off by the conversation that we're having, yeah, what would you all suggest for students that are interested in trying to see, like, if this is what research is, where do I find these opportunities?
So if you think you might be interested in biomedical research, I would recommend looking at the website of the BBSP program, which is the Biological and Biomedical Sciences program. It's the graduate school program for training in biomedical research. And what's nice is this website, actually, I can probably pull it up quickly and put a link. Oh yes, perfect, Ariana. There's a list of all of the research labs in the School of Medicine or in labs that are affiliated with with this program. And there are descriptions of all of the research that is going on campus. And there's a huge breadth of research. So all covering so many different things. There's people who work on nutrition. There's people who work on coronavirus. There's people who work on, in microbiology and in cancer. And, it's just this huge variety of research that's going on, and you can find specific labs. And so if something looks interesting to you, one of the best ways to find a research opportunity is to just directly email the PI or the lab head. So whoever's lab it is. So like that would be myself, for example, or Daniel, if you were interested in his research. And you introduce yourself, you say, what your major is, why you thought their research was interesting, or, and that if you would, whether or not you want some research experience. And then usually what happens is a lot of times PIs are busy and if they don't have space, they'll just ignore your email. So you just keep trying till you find someone who responds. And then there's also a resource somewhere that I think where undergrads can actually, where lab heads can like advertise that they have spaces for undergrad research. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I could probably find out for you all if you're interested. So I'm basically suggesting you either sort of cold call a lab head by email, or you can find some of these postings that are out there. You've heard about those, right, Dan?
Yeah, I can find the link and share it with you guys. Yeah. There's also a lot of summer programs that are meant for basic research. You could look into those, and the good thing about those is that they pay. Yes. And, you could also do it outside of UNC if that's something you're interested in. I will say that, like, lab heads or professors, they're called PIs usually. They're like really suckers for excitement. So I think, as long as you sound excited about the opportunity to do research, I think, they're probably going to be very receptive. And, I think most of us understand that a lot of undergraduates don't have any prior experience. And so that's not, by any means a prerequisite. And so, I mean, like I said, we take high school students into the lab. So, if you're looking for a research experience, I think it's possible. You just have to sort of look around for different labs. And if you guys are, are serious about that, and if I can be helpful in any way, I'd be happy to sort of put you in contact or, help you navigate that. So,
yeah. Would you all mind sharing your information or like the information to your lab like that, if our students are interested in seeing the type of work that you all do, they have that as well.
Absolutely. And I can also, if you guys are interested, put you in contact with the undergraduate researchers in our labs too, just so you can ask them, what it's like and how it's going. Did they look for multiple labs? How did they decide where to go? And so.
Thank you. Any other questions at the moment?
I had a curiosity question, if that's okay.
Of course.
Awesome. Could you all speak to, because I heard you mention this briefly about the possibility of going outside of Carolina. So I know that you all didn't do all of your program in one space. So can you talk about the, I guess, either perks or maybe challenges of navigating multiple schools for your experiences, or going straight through one program or going to various ones?
Right. So, for the outside research experiences, those are typically done in the summertime. And so there's a lot of formalized programs for undergraduate research experiences. Actually, our department has a very successful program. It's called the Carolina Fellows Program. And that we typically host about 12 students from all over the country for the summer. There's also like more involved, research experiences that might sort of go into semesters. And so I'm not 100% sure how exactly those work and how you deal with credits and things like that, but I know that they exist. There's also even research experiences that can be done partly abroad. Though, obviously now that's probably not, happening with the pandemic, but most of the programs for undergraduates are summer programs. And they're very good, actually. They're, research and intensive programs. There's also hybrid programs that are sort of, geared more towards people that have an interest in clinical or translational research. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
No, it definitely did. I know for my master's program, there was a big push to get us to not be at the same institution. So just curious to see if that was similar in the medical field.
I think at different stages of training in sort of scientist training, that is the expectation. So for example, typically you get your PhD, then you do something called a postdoc, and then you try to get a faculty position. And the convention is for you to move institutions at each of those steps in order to show growing independence of thought and drive. Because if you stay at the same institution, for example, when you go to your postdoc fellowship, and people might think you're still doing, or you might end up doing science that's very related to what you did when you were a graduate student, and you really want to kind of grow beyond that, if that makes sense. So that is true for sort of the whole scientist trajectory, that you generally change institutions. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Although I think that this is sort of, I don't know, outdated thinking. I mean, I think there's some people, it's very difficult to just move from city to city every couple of years, due to any number of reasons. So that is very slowly changing, but it is an expectation in this moment, yeah.
Thank you so much. I guess another question would be, just like overall, is there anything that you wish you would have known before going into grad school?
Yes, I was thinking back about one of the other benefits to sort of having worked in a research lab before going to graduate school was that I had pretty good understanding of what I was getting myself into. And I think that is probably maybe the biggest benefit for the particular trajectory that I had. I do think grad school, which is maybe not what everyone here is interested in doing, but it is a particular kind of beast, and it's very hard actually sometimes. So I think that is one of the things that I think many people wish they knew what they were getting into when they started grad schools. I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I guess I would agree with aspects of that. And it's a little bit different, right? Like in undergrad, you sort of take courses, somebody grades your exam, and, then you accumulate enough credits and then you graduate. A lot of professional schools are very similar, where you might have coursework and then, some measurable thing that you have to do where, there's a format to do it in, and, you sort of know the path to doing it. The challenge with grad school is that, like, in order to graduate, you have to make some discovery, some research discovery. And that looks very different for everyone. And it takes a different amount of time. And, some people get lucky and they make a ton of discoveries very early on. Some people struggle through no fault of their own, right? It's just, part of it is actually just luck. And so, it's sort of, it was a little bit interesting for me, to go through that, because it's not like, you can study for a test and that if you put enough hours in, you're going to ace it. Like, no, that's not how research works. It's just a very slow and sort of, you got to keep at it over the course of many years. And then, you hope that you make a discovery. And so I think a lot of people can find that frustrating. And at the beginning, I found it a little bit frustrating that you just can't outsmart it, or you just can't study for it. But then later on, I was actually like, pretty into it once you sort of accept the fact that it's a very long and slow process. And then at the end of it, at the end of grad school, 6 years in or whatever it is, you can look back and, look at the accomplishments and, your discoveries and, your publications and whatnot. I think that's very rewarding. But there's no formalized system that, tells you how to get your PhD. It's actually, a PhD looks very different for every graduate student. So, yeah.
Thank you. And I guess another question would be, how are you all navigating your labs right now under the COVID pandemic?
It's very hard. The pandemic, so part of the work in the lab is computational. So, just basically analysis on computer. But really, most of the work we do is in-person, experiments. And shutdowns were difficult. The limitations on the number of people that you can have were difficult, are difficult. And some of the experiments we do, they can take 12 hours or something like that. And, when we have shifts, like, it just doesn't, doesn't make sense. There's not enough time to do the work. So I think most of us have experienced things have become very slow over the past year. And actually, they're still quite slow. Another unexpected thing is that, we had, there's a lot of, equipment and tools and reagents that we use in a lab that are just not available. They're back ordered, or they're not, they're not being made, or if they are being made, they're being used exclusively for coronavirus research. And so that's another layer of slowing things down. Another, probably the most important thing is just sort of the sort of psychological toll that the pandemic has taken on people, and, working from home and being so isolated. I feel badly for our international students that live alone and are sort of, away from their families and don't really have very much contact with anybody, especially at the beginning. It's of course much better now. So that's been another layer that, has been a real challenge to deal with. Just sort of the psychological burden of the pandemic, and of course the worry and the isolation that a lot of folks experience. I'm sure it's true for every field, not just research.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, it's fine. I just share that I have a rotation student. So this is during your first year of graduate school here at UNC, you have rotations, and three rotations in different labs to kind of see where you fit so that you can make an educated choice when you sort of select where you're going to do your training. So I have a rotation student in my lab right now, and I have never seen her face from here down in person. I've seen her face on Zoom, but it's been a while since I've seen her face, even though I see her every day in the lab, and it's made it harder to sort of make a connection, I think. So that's been another sort of challenge. But I at the same time, I'm very grateful that we can be in person together with masks on and separated, of course, but it's better than not being in the lab at all. But yeah, it's been hard.
Well, I want to thank you all again for agreeing to meet with us. And I just want to give a few minutes for the scholars to pose any other questions that they may have. Feel free to unmute yourself or to type them in the chat.
Yeah, if anything we've said is unclear, I've been, sort of in this field for a while. Sometimes I forget what I didn't know when I was younger related to this this career. So if you have any questions about anything I've said, just ask.
Yeah, any questions about career and research, from how long things take to how much money you might expect to make to how competitive things might be. Like, happy to answer any of it.
Where will we be able to find y'all's contact information, just in case other questions arise later on, or for advice regarding research?
I suppose we can share it. And maybe Ariana can help us with that.
Take it in the chat or just by email?
Put it in the chat too. Yeah, I'll just do that right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I also have a little website.
Thank you. Any other questions before we end today's event? Awesome. Well, thank you again so much. If we could just give our presenters a Zoom round of applause. Thank you, thank you. We really appreciate your time, and yeah, thank you for sharing your contact as well. And we'll be sharing the recording with our Pulso scholars and also adding it to our PLC website. So any other students that are interested can also see this. So yeah, thank you once again. And if there's any final words you all have.
Yeah, I don't know. shoot me an email if you need to, if you'd like to. And I hope you all, enjoy the rest of your week.
Yeah, likewise. If in any way we can be, well, I can't speak for Maria, but if in any way I can be supportive of, anything, I know that many of you guys are interested in sort of health research, perhaps medical school or professional schools, but, I know that research often helps in getting into those programs. And so if there's anything that, I can do to be supportive, either directly or by recommending, colleague, just feel free to reach out and let me know.
All right, everyone. Well, enjoy the rest of your week and rest of your day. Thank you.